When my daughter-in-law told me I was no longer welcome in her house, I smiled instead of crying, and even now I can still feel how strange that smile felt on my face, like it did not belong to me at all, like it was borrowed from some other woman who knew how to hide pain better than I ever did. Her voice was calm when she said it, so calm that it almost sounded kind, and that was what made it hurt more. It was not the kind of anger you can argue with or defend yourself against. It was the kind of calm that tells you the decision has already been made, the kind that leaves no space for explanation or tears. She stood there with her arms crossed, not shaking, not emotional, not unsure, and she said very slowly and very clearly, "I think it's best if you don't come here anymore." There was no pause after that sentence, no softening of the eyes, no sign that she might change her mind if I said the right thing. It was final, like a door closing quietly but forever. I remember nodding my head as if I understood, as if her words made sense to me, as if this was a normal conversation between two people who cared about each other. I nodded because my body knew how to pretend even when my heart did not. Inside me, something cracked so softly that no one else could hear it, not even my own son, who was standing just a few steps behind her near the doorway. I felt that crack spread slowly through my chest, like a thin line in glass that grows wider with time, and I knew that even if I tried, I could never put that piece of myself back together the same way again. My son did not say a single word. He did not ask why. He did not look confused. He did not step forward or call me Amy the way he used to when he was small and scared. He just stood there, quiet, almost frozen, and for one brief second our eyes met. In that second, I searched his face for something, anything, that looked like the boy I raised, the boy who used to hide behind me when he was nervous, the boy who used to hold my hand tightly when crossing the road. But that boy was gone. He looked away so quickly, as if my pain was something he could not bear to see, and that small movement hurt me more deeply than any insult ever could. I had carried him inside my body for 9 long months. I had stayed awake at night when he had fever. I had prayed for him when I had nothing else to offer. And now, when I needed one word, just one word from him, he gave me silence. So many questions filled my mind at once that I felt dizzy with them. I wanted to ask what I had done wrong, because in my heart I truly did not know. I wanted to ask when I became a problem instead of a mother, when my presence started feeling like a burden instead of a blessing. I wanted to ask how love, something that had once felt so strong and so natural, could turn into distance so quietly that I did not even notice it happening. I wanted to ask when I lost my place in his life, and who decided that I no longer belonged. But my mouth stayed closed, because sometimes words feel too small to carry the weight of what you are feeling, and sometimes silence feels safer than speaking and being rejected again. I bent down slowly and picked up my purse with hands that felt heavier than they should have. I adjusted my scarf, the same scarf I had worn so many times to family gatherings in that house, the same scarf I had worn when I cooked for them, when I sat in their living room, when I prayed for their happiness. I smiled again, that practiced smile, the one I had learned over years of swallowing pain and telling myself to be strong. I smiled because crying in front of them would have made me feel even smaller, and I did not want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I walked toward the door with careful steps, as if I was afraid that if I moved too fast, my heart might fall out of my chest and everyone would see it. As I stepped outside, the air felt different, heavier somehow, even though it was the same street I had walked on many times before. The door closed behind me with a soft sound, not a slam, not a bang, just a gentle click, and that sound echoed inside me louder than thunder. In that moment, I did not feel angry. I did not feel like shouting or arguing. I felt empty, like someone had quietly taken something precious from me while I was not looking. I walked away from that house the way a guest walks away after staying too long, polite, careful, pretending everything is fine, even though inside I was losing a home I never realized I could be locked out of. That day taught me something very painful, something I wish I had never had to learn. It taught me that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the same people you would still protect without thinking twice. Even as I walked away, part of me wanted to turn back and apologize, even though I did not know what I was apologizing for. Part of me wanted to tell my son that I loved him, that I would always be there for him no matter what, that he did not need to choose between us. Even after being told I was not welcome, my heart still beat for him the same way it always had, stubborn and loyal and full of love that refused to disappear. I went home that day and sat alone in the quiet, replaying every moment again and again in my mind, wondering if there was a different word I could have said, a different expression I could have worn, a different silence that might have changed the outcome. I did not know then that this was only the beginning of a much longer pain. I did not know that this ban was not just about visits or walls or doors, but about something much deeper that had been growing in secret for a long time. I did not know that one day, much later, a lawyer would ask a single, simple question that would slowly pull the truth out into the open, exposing everything she had hidden so carefully behind calm words and crossed arms. And I did not know, as I sat there holding my purse like it was the only thing keeping me steady, that when the truth finally came out, it would not bring the relief I imagined. I did not know that knowing the truth would hurt even more than being banned from my own son's home, because some wounds are not made by lies alone, but by the silence of the people who choose not to stand up for you when it matters the most. Before everything broke, before words became weapons and silence became distance, we were just a simple family trying to survive life the best we could. We did not have much money, and there were many days when I worried about how I would manage the next month, but our home was full of warmth. It was the kind of warmth that does not come from heaters or expensive furniture, but from love, routine, and shared struggles. After my husband passed away when my son was still very young, life changed overnight. One day I was a wife with a partner, and the next day I was a widow with a child who depended on me for everything. I did not have the time or the luxury to fall apart. I cried at night when he was asleep, quietly into my pillow, and in the morning I got up, wiped my face, and became strong again because I had no other choice. Raising my son alone was not easy, but I never complained out loud. Complaining does not put food on the table, and it does not make pain go away. I worked small jobs wherever I could find them. Some days I cleaned houses, some days I stitched clothes, some days I helped neighbors with their work just to earn a little extra. I counted every coin carefully, planning what was needed and what could wait. Many times I skipped meals without telling him, saying I was not hungry, just so he could eat properly. I wore the same clothes year after year, mending them again and again, so that he could have new ones for school. When his shoes wore out, I bought him new shoes and told myself mine could last one more year. That is what mothers do. We learn to disappear a little so our children can shine. He was my whole world, my reason for waking up every morning. When he did well in school, I felt like I had succeeded. When he was sick, my body felt weak with worry. When he smiled, I felt rich, even if my pockets were empty. I watched him grow from a small, quiet boy into a responsible young man, and I was proud of him in a way that is hard to explain. Not the loud, boastful kind of pride, but a deep, quiet pride that sits in your chest and warms you from the inside. I believed that all my sacrifices had meaning, because they had helped shape him into the man he was becoming. So when he told me he wanted to marry her, my heart was full. I was truly happy for him. I could see how confident she was, how educated, how sure of herself. She spoke clearly, walked with purpose, and seemed to know exactly what she wanted from life. I told myself that these were good qualities, that she would bring strength and balance into my son's life. I even hoped, quietly, that she might bring some companionship into mine too. On their wedding day, I cried tears of joy, not sadness. I remember holding her hands, looking into her eyes, and calling her my daughter. I meant it with all my heart. I wanted her to feel welcomed, respected, and loved, because I knew how difficult it can be to enter a new family. In the beginning, things really did seem fine. We spoke politely to each other. We shared meals at the same table. I tried very hard not to interfere in their lives. I knew the world had changed since my time. I knew daughters-in-law did not want mothers-in-law watching every move, giving advice they did not ask for, or controlling the house the way it used to be in the past. I did not want to be that kind of mother, so I kept my distance. I stayed quiet even when I had opinions. I respected their space, their decisions, and their way of doing things. I told myself that love also means knowing when to step back. But silence, I slowly learned, can also be misunderstood. When you stay quiet for too long, people start to believe you have nothing to say, or worse, that you have something to hide. Slowly, without any clear moment I could point to, I began to feel like a visitor in my own family. Conversations would stop when I entered the room, like someone had pressed a pause button. Laughter would fade into awkward silence. Plans were made without telling me, and I would find out later through small comments or messages from others. My son started visiting me less, calling me less, and when I noticed the distance and gently asked if I had done something wrong, he would smile and say, "No, Ummi, everything is fine." But everything was not fine, and my heart knew it even when my mind tried to deny it. There was a wall growing between us, brick by brick, day by day, and I could not see who was building it or how to stop it. I felt it in the smallest things, the things people often ignore. I felt it in the way she corrected me in front of others, her tone polite but sharp, like a reminder that I was old-fashioned or out of place. I felt it in the way she sighed when I spoke too much, even when I was only telling a simple story or giving a harmless suggestion. I felt it in the way she made decisions about the house, about family matters, without even asking my opinion, as if my experience and presence no longer mattered. I started questioning myself constantly. I replayed conversations in my head, wondering if I had said something wrong or looked at her the wrong way. I tried even harder to be patient. I told myself again and again that love means adjusting, that relationships require compromise, and that a mother should not become a burden in her son's life. I reminded myself that he was married now, that his priorities had changed, and that I had to accept my new place quietly and gracefully. I swallowed my feelings and smiled, believing that this was the right thing to do. What I did not know was that my silence was slowly being used against me. Every time I chose not to speak, it was seen as agreement. Every time I stayed quiet, it was turned into proof that I did not care or that I was guilty of things I had never done. My patience was mistaken for weakness, and my kindness was seen as something that could be pushed aside without consequences. I did not realize that every quiet moment, every step back, every effort to keep peace was slowly turning into evidence she would later use to push me out completely. Looking back now, I understand how fragile those early days really were. At the time, I believed love would be enough to hold us together. That time would soften misunderstandings and bring us closer. I believed that if I stayed kind and patient, things would improve. I did not see that the ground beneath us was already cracking, and that the simple family we once were was slowly drifting toward something I never imagined I would have to face. The problems did not come all at once, and that is what made them so dangerous. If they had come loudly, with shouting and clear arguments, maybe I could have understood what was happening and defended myself. But they came quietly, like drops of water falling into a cup, one by one, slow and patient, until one day the cup was full and spilled over, and everyone acted surprised, as if they had no idea how it happened. At first, I did not even realize these small moments were problems. I thought they were misunderstandings, temporary moods, normal adjustments between people learning to live together. I told myself not to overthink, not to take things to heart. But the heart does not listen when it is being wounded little by little. She started saying that I interfered too much, and those words confused me deeply, because I hardly spoke at all. I stayed quiet in their conversations. I did not give advice unless I was asked. I did not question their decisions. Sometimes I would sit in the same room and say nothing for hours, just listening, just being present. Yet somehow, my presence alone was being described as interference. It made me feel like even my silence was too loud for her, like just existing in the same space was already a mistake. Then she said I tried to control my son, and that hurt me in a way that is difficult to explain. I had spent my whole life letting him grow, letting him choose, letting him become his own person. The only things I asked were small, motherly things, like whether he had eaten properly or if he was getting enough rest. These were not questions meant to control him, but questions that came naturally from years of caring. Still, those simple words were turned into accusations, and suddenly I was painted as someone who wanted power instead of love. She also said that I made her uncomfortable, and when I heard that, I searched my memory again and again, trying to find a moment where I had been unkind or disrespectful. I could not find one. I always greeted her with kindness. I always spoke to her politely. I tried to include her, to understand her, to accept her ways even when they were different from mine. Hearing that my kindness was being described as discomfort made me feel like the ground beneath me was no longer stable. like reality itself was slipping out of my hands. Then came the accusations that felt even more personal. One day, she said I had moved her things without permission. I was shocked. I told her calmly that I had not touched anything of hers. I even tried to laugh it off at first, thinking it must be a simple misunderstanding. But she looked at me with eyes that were cold and suspicious, eyes that clearly did not believe a single word I was saying. In that moment, I realized that truth no longer mattered. What mattered was what she had already decided to believe. Another day, she accused me of spreading stories about her to relatives. When she said that, my heart started beating fast, not because I was guilty, but because I was completely lost. I did not even know what stories she was talking about. I rarely spoke to relatives, and when I did, I spoke kindly about my son and his wife. I asked her what she meant, but she did not give details. She did not need to. The accusation itself was enough to create doubt, enough to paint me as someone who caused trouble behind closed doors. Slowly, I noticed my son changing, and that change hurt more than anything else. His voice, once warm and familiar, became distant. His replies became short, almost impatient. He no longer listened the way he used to. When I tried to explain myself, when I tried to tell him that I did not understand what was happening, he would sigh and say, "Please don't create drama." That word stayed with me for days, echoing in my mind. Drama. As if my pain was just noise. As if my confusion and heartbreak were nothing more than unnecessary trouble in his busy life. After that, I started walking on eggshells around my own family. I thought twice before speaking, sometimes 3 times, sometimes not at all. I held my breath when entering their home, afraid that even the sound of my footsteps might irritate someone. I watched every word, every expression, every movement, worried that one wrong step would be remembered and used against me later. Slowly, without anyone saying it directly, I stopped feeling like his mother and started feeling like an unwanted guest, someone who had overstayed her welcome and did not know how to leave gracefully. The worst part of all of this was not the accusations themselves, as painful as they were. The worst part was being unheard. Every time I tried to defend myself, it only made things worse. My explanations were seen as excuses. My tears were seen as manipulation. My silence was seen as guilt. No matter what I did, it felt wrong. So eventually, I chose the only option that seemed to cause less damage. I stayed quiet. I kept my thoughts to myself. I smiled when I wanted to cry. I went home and cried alone at night, quietly, so no one could accuse me of causing more trouble. During those nights, I prayed more than I ever had before. I asked God for patience, because patience felt like the only thing I had left. I asked him to soften her heart, to help her see my intentions, to remove the anger and suspicion that had grown between us. Most of all, I prayed for my son. I asked God to bring him back to me emotionally, to help him see me not as a problem, but as his mother, the same woman who had loved him long before anyone else entered his life. But instead of softening, her heart seemed to grow harder with time. The more I stepped back, the more confident she became in her accusations. The more I stayed quiet, the more powerful her words seemed. And then one day, she said something that changed everything. She told my son that she no longer felt safe with me around. That sentence was like a knife, sharp and sudden, because once fear is mentioned, truth no longer matters. Fear does not ask for proof. Fear does not listen to explanations. Fear only demands distance. My son believed her. Or maybe he did not fully believe her, but he chose peace over truth, comfort over confrontation. Either way, the result was the same. From that moment on, I was no longer just misunderstood. I was seen as a threat. And that was the moment when the distance between us stopped being accidental and turned into a decision, a choice made quietly, without my voice, without my consent, and without any way for me to undo it. The day she banned me from the house was so quiet that even now, that quiet still echoes inside me. There was no shouting, no dramatic argument, no tears falling onto the floor. There were only cold, carefully chosen words, spoken in a steady voice, like a final judgment that could not be appealed. She spoke as if she were explaining something practical, something reasonable, something that made sense to everyone in the room except me. She said it was better for everyone this way, that it would reduce stress and bring peace, and she even said it was temporary, as if adding that word would make the pain smaller. But temporary pain still hurts just as deeply, especially when you do not know when it will end or if it ever truly will. My son stood there the entire time, silent and still, and in that silence I lost him in a way I never thought possible. He did not interrupt her. He did not ask for time to think. He did not look at me with confusion or regret. He simply stood there, allowing her words to become his decision too. That silence felt heavier than any argument could have been. It felt like a quiet agreement, like a signature placed at the bottom of a page without reading what was written above it. I realized in that moment that there was nothing left for me to fight with. No words would change his mind, and no tears would soften her heart. So I did the only thing I could do to protect what little dignity I still had. I gathered myself, straightened my back, and walked out without arguing. Every step felt like it was taking me further away from the life I had known, but I refused to beg or plead. I had already been made to feel small enough. When I reached my own home, the silence welcomed me like an old friend. I sat alone in the dark, not even bothering to turn on the lights, and let the weight of everything settle into my bones. I did not cry loudly. I did not scream or break things. I cried the way older women cry, quietly and carefully, with one hand over the mouth and tears soaking silently into the fabric of a scarf. So the pain does not frighten others, and so no one can accuse you of being weak. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly turned into months. Life outside moved on as if nothing had happened, but inside me, time felt stuck. I was no longer invited to family gatherings. Weddings, dinners, celebrations, and even small get-togethers happened without my name being mentioned. I was not informed about important decisions in my son's life, decisions I once would have been a part of. I learned about changes through distant relatives, neighbors, or accidental comments from people who did not even realize they were breaking my heart. Hearing news about my own son from others made me feel like a stranger to my own blood, like someone who had been gently but firmly erased. I questioned myself constantly during those months. I replayed memories, conversations, and moments, searching for a clear reason, something concrete that could explain how I had gone from being a mother to being a problem. I wondered if I should have spoken up more earlier, or if I should have stayed even quieter. I wondered if my kindness had been my biggest mistake, or if my silence had made things worse. Some nights, the questions kept me awake until morning, and other nights, exhaustion pulled me into sleep before I could find any answers at all. Then one day, something unexpected happened. My phone rang, and the number on the screen was unfamiliar. I almost did not answer it, thinking it was just another wrong call or someone trying to sell something. But something inside me told me to pick it up. On the other end of the line was a man who introduced himself as a lawyer. For a moment, I was sure there had been a mistake. Why would a lawyer be calling me? My hands started to shake as I held the phone, and my heart began to beat faster with a strange mix of fear and confusion. He spoke calmly and politely, explaining that there was a matter involving family property and some legal records that required my presence. He said he needed to ask me a few questions and requested that I come to his office when it was convenient. His voice was professional, almost gentle, but his words felt heavy. I agreed without really understanding what I was agreeing to. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the phone for a long time, trying to make sense of it all. I had no idea then that this call was about more than paperwork. I did not know that it was connected to everything I had been through, to the accusations, the distance, and the ban that had pushed me out of my own family. I did not know that this unexpected moment would soon force the truth into the open, whether anyone was ready for it or not. All I knew was that something was about to change, and that quiet chapter of being erased was coming to an end in a way I never could have imagined. The lawyer looked calm, professional, and serious as he sat across from me, his desk neat and his voice steady, the kind of voice that does not rush and does not soften the truth either. At first, he asked very simple questions, the kind that seem harmless and routine. He asked my full name, my husband's name, dates I had memorized long ago because they were tied to important moments of my life. He asked about documents, signatures, and records, and I answered as best as I could, still unsure why any of this concerned me. As the questions continued, I noticed how carefully he listened, how he wrote things down without interrupting, as if every small detail mattered more than I realized. Then he paused, lifting his eyes from the papers in front of him, and in that pause the room felt suddenly heavier. He asked one question, slowly and clearly, and the sound of his voice seemed to fill the space around us. "Did you give written permission for your daughter-in-law to transfer ownership?" For a moment, I could not even understand what he was asking. The words felt unfamiliar, as if they belonged to someone else's story, not mine. I looked at him, confused, my heart starting to beat faster. "What permission?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, because I truly had no idea what he was talking about. That was the moment everything came out, piece by piece, like a curtain being pulled back to reveal something that had been hidden in plain sight. The lawyer explained what had been happening behind my back, how certain decisions had been made using assumptions, half-truths, and documents that were never meant to be used without my consent. As he spoke, the memories of the past months began to connect in ways I had never imagined. The accusations, the sudden fear, the insistence that I was a problem, the urgency to remove me from the house, all of it was built on one lie that I never knew existed. She needed me out of the picture, and that truth hurt more than anything else I had heard that day. She did not just want distance or peace. She needed my absence to make her actions easier, to move forward without questions, without resistance, without someone who could say no. And the easiest way to do that was to turn me into the villain, to make me look controlling, interfering, unsafe. Once that image was created, everything else became simple. My silence had protected her lies without me realizing it. Every time I stayed quiet to keep peace, every time I stepped back to avoid conflict, I made it easier for her story to survive. And now, sitting in that office, the truth was finally speaking for me, even though my own voice had been ignored for so long. As the lawyer finished explaining, I expected to feel something strong, maybe relief, maybe anger, maybe even satisfaction at being proven right. But I did not feel victorious. I did not feel happy. I did not feel the kind of triumph people imagine when the truth comes out. Instead, I felt tired in a way that went deeper than my body. It was the kind of tiredness that settles into your bones after carrying pain for too long without rest. My heart felt heavy, not because I had lost, but because I had finally understood how deeply I had been betrayed by the people I loved the most. In that moment, I realized something painful and important at the same time. Being right does not always heal the heart. Sometimes, it only shows you how much you trusted people who did not protect you in return. It shows you how love can be used as a weakness, and how kindness can be mistaken for silence and compliance. The truth did not erase the months of loneliness, the nights of quiet crying, or the feeling of being erased from my own family. It simply placed a clear light on all of it, leaving no room for denial. When I walked out of that office, the world outside looked the same, but I felt different. I felt older, not in years, but in understanding. I knew one thing for sure as I stepped into the sunlight and took a deep breath. I was never weak, no matter how many times I had been made to feel that way. I was just too kind in a place where kindness was mistaken for silence, and silence was taken as permission to hurt me. And even though the truth had finally come out, the real work now was learning how to carry that truth without letting it harden my heart. Because despite everything, I did not want to become someone who stopped believing in love.